Basically, you gotta love teaching. It's first, of course, you gotta love the dance, but you also gotta be willing to share whatever you know. And I say that because I've seen people that are really good dancers, but they're just not able to bring it across, or they don't really have the patience, or they don't look at the progression in the students. So that's really important, and the only way to find out is by trying it. And I learned a lot during all my years of teaching. I still learn, and I think there's no shortcuts. You just have to start and develop. I mean, the shortcuts that I can give is that when I started, my mistake in a way is that I focused too much on the moves instead of the approach. And of course there's a million dance classes already, but the thing that sets this dance apart from other dances is that it really is from the inside out, and meaning that it starts with you. And if you teach somebody breaking, you got to be able to get that creativity out instead of just like sort of filling them up with your moves and your movement. Learn them the basics, learn them like this, the techniques and the form, but all the imagination should come from their side, and find ways to actually get that out. And that's the biggest challenge for me at this moment in teaching. And if you realize that's the biggest difference in other dance classes, then I think you're on a good path.
With the issues we're having in b-boying today, you know what I'm saying? Like with the trendiness and the lack of creativity, and all this is coming is it could be avoided if we had more creative teachers out there teaching. Pretty much, we had more out there. Than now you're getting hands-on with the people, and of course you're not gonna be able to make them be original or whatever, but you can teach them a way and how to start to think creatively, how to start to try things in different ways, and go, instead of always doing this, why not do that? Try that with it, see how that looks. And when I teach, I try to teach all styles, be as well-rounded as possible, and in a unique way, each style in a unique way. So if I teach footwork, I'm not going to teach them 6-step or 3-step, or anything like that. If I do, I'll show them oh, okay, these are some fundamental steps, but now here, this is how you create something new out of it and develop your own type of steps and patterns and techniques and flows and styles with it. It gets pretty deep. So the more teachers we have like that out there planting the seeds, then the more b-boys you're going to see start growing to look more unique, and there's not enough of that, and that's why the scene looks the way that it does today, I think.
You just said that there is a different way to teach little kids, and there's a different way to teach teenagers, and a different way to teach adults. In what way are they different from each other, and are there anything similar that you can teach to all of them?
Well, you can teach the moves, that's similar, but the attention level is totally different. Kids, their attention level, they're sponges, so they're all over the place. You could be talking to them, and they don't have to look at you to know, for them to listen to you, And that might be frustrating for a teacher, because usually you have everybody watching you, and you're like, all right, this is what we're going to do, and everybody's watching. But little kids, most of them are not going to look at you. They're too busy like this, They're looking around, but they're hearing you. Sometimes they don't listen, but they hear you. Most kids hear you. They're sponges. You just got to be more, with kids, you got to be more playful, all right? They don't really like to be scolded. They don't like to be told what to do. Adults, they want you to tell them what to do. They came to your class for a reason. They gave you money because they want someone to tell them what to do, Teenagers, same thing, kind of an attitude thing, but they listen to you more, and they're looking at you. They may show more respect than what kids are, but it depends. Different areas, different kids, different ages is different. Like I said, experience is the best way to learn. But like I said, their attention level is different.
When you teach your classes, do you teach routines to people? Do you think that's a good way to teach people?
It's a good thing if you have like a reoccurring class, like the same class. It's good to have like, you know, something to go back to remember. But I personally, I don't teach like that. I feel like it takes too much time, and you're limiting yourself and the student from learning more, because you're just repeating a same routine. But then after that routine, how do they expand from that? You know, how do they apply that routine to their skill set? Are they gonna go to a battle and do that routine? No. And if they do, I mean, and you also took the workshop and you see it, you're like, oh God, that's so corny. Like, you know, there's no stemming out from there. I feel like you learn the routine and then that's just it. Like, you could use it in a battle, but it's just one round. Whereas if I'm doing a class, I like to touch, you know, a lot of different points, you know, top rock footwork, freezes, and, you know, the approach, transitions. There's a lot you could teach in a small amount of time, where they could move on and be like, okay, you don't got this, but you got the idea. Don't forget, take this back home, practice it, let's move on and let's try something else. That way you have homework, you got a couple things, you have a list of things to practice, instead of going back home and say, yo, Jigs taught us a dope ass routine, like, let me see it, boom, and then you bust it, and then that's it. That's all you got out of that class. Really is like, you know, you selling yourself short, and you're like, you're not really teaching much. You know, you taught them a couple steps, a little choreography, but that choreography is not going to take them further. If you teach them some tools, some basics, some foundation that they could master, that's going to help their form. That's going to get them stronger. They're going to have better balance. They're going to have a better idea. They get more creative, have different ways and ins and outs of things, you know, and different, you know, it just opens up your mind way more than just repeating a routine for 1 hour straight. We could practice like 20 to 30 moves within that hour real quick and just move on. And even easy stuff, but it all adds up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for me, teaching a routine is okay when your kids are still learning, when they're young and they haven't been breaking for a long time, you know. Obviously, you're going to teach them for them to get the idea of music, steps, form, technique, different things that you do, you know, with your hand postures, your gestures, the way you use your feet, the way you use, you know, you pivot your feet, different things, you know, maybe different footwork steps. That obviously I teach when I'm teaching kids that are learning breaking. But people that are already in the scene, that are taking your classes, that have been breaking for 5-6 years, those kids, for me, from my experience, and even when I think back when I was breaking for 5-6 years, at that point I wanted to know the understanding, like the knowledge behind their approach, why they break the way they break, like how is it that they got to that point, you know, that's what I want to learn. And that's kind of, you know, when I learned, the people that mentored me, they never taught me a move, they never taught me a routine, you know, they taught me knowledge, they taught me approach, they taught me the game, they taught me hip-hop history, they taught me what hip-hop is, they taught me the image of a b-boy, you know, they didn't teach me, oh, you gotta do this step like this, and you gotta freeze like this, and you gotta grab your ankle like this. You know what I'm saying? I was never taught that way. So it's like, why am I gonna do that to the kid that's been breaking 5-6 years when I know that he's not looking for that?
Well, the first thing you should learn when you're going to a workshop, well, what I like to do is I like to explain to people that I want them to first dance for themselves. I always explain to people that this is how I explain my approach of dancing, but you don't have to follow my approach. The one thing I want students to understand is to just love dancing and being true to themselves and not try to dance for me or anybody else. That's the first thing that I like to say. And then after I explain that, I explain the importance of foundation. That, you know, Abstract said something a long time ago, foundation is the key to creativity. I believe that also. I believe that foundation is the key to creativity because foundation is what gives you the skill of movement. And foundation teaches you how to move your body in many different ways and many different levels. So foundation is always the right place to start. You know, it means that you start from the ground up. If we don't start from foundation, and I'm teaching people how to flip and do air flares, that means we're starting from the roof. And if you're starting from the roof, I feel like, you know, it's not a good place to start because the roof is just going to collapse. And a good way of making you understand foundation and how I explained the roof and, you know, starting from the ground is, if you're starting from the ground with foundation, what it's doing is it's developing your body to become stronger. So all this movement on the floor and your fingertips on the floor like this, and all these squat down positions, all this is doing is building the muscles in your legs and the muscles in your arms. So it's giving you the strength that you need to move on to a higher level, to move on to things like flipping, and to move on to things like air moves and tricks and air flares and stuff like that. So if you're just starting breaking and you're starting with the tricks, I believe you're going to get hurt because your body's not developed yet. The small little muscles in your body are not developed to handle those big moves like flipping and air flare, you know? So if you start with trying to throw air flares and just doing flips, then your body eventually is going to collapse like the roof that had no foundation.
Nice. What was your main motivation and inspiration to start the Battle Droids Kids crew and to do more teaching work and events within your community?
Yeah, so in our city we always had a b-boy scene, and it was never a very big scene, or never was a really small scene. And then when you look at Holland, because we battle a lot in Holland, it's like a half an hour drive, and they had an upcoming scene. They had a lot of kids breaking, and you know, in the beginning it was cute, and then 1 or 2 years later, these kids really starting to be good. And there was not just one kid, it was like a whole bunch of them. And we were like, damn, this is crazy. Holland is really exploding. So, back at the time, I used to teach a lot, but I used to teach for mostly getting money, you know what I mean? Like, I would teach the kids, but I would never thought they would be hardcore enough to become real b-boys, and you know what I mean? I never really believed in it. I might have think the kids that really want to become b-boys, they might get out of these dance schools, they might become real b-boys, but I didn't put any extra input or effort into these kids. But then I realized, why don't we have any crazy kids here in Belgium? Then I realized, oh, it's because the people teaching them are not teaching them the right way, or there's no people behind it. So then I thought, oh, whose fault is that? Oh, it's my fault because I'm one of the guys that's teaching the most over here. So then I thought, okay, I got to switch this completely. I got to teach, not just to make money, but I got to teach to make sure the next generation will stand there, you know what I mean? And not just any kind of new generation, a sick new generation. Because I saw these Holland kids and they were so good. I was like, kids can actually learn really quick. Because there weren't that many kids back then. So that's when I switched it. I started thinking about how am I going to make my classes productive? How am I going to train kids from zero to hero? And I thought of these systems and these way of working, and then I got more involved, putting more time into the kids. Besides the 1 hour class they had a week, they had more trainings, and that's how it evolved.
So, as a teacher, what qualities should a teacher have if they want to be a good role model and to be a good influence on the kids and the young people that are learning from you?
Well, I think nowadays, which is very important, is you actually should practice what you preach, of course, for every teacher. And like when I started, there were like a lot of people that were teaching, but they were nowhere to be seen in the community. And that for me is weird, because I feel the first obligation we have, or actually the biggest goal of teaching, is to actually make your students a member of the breaking community. So first of all, you should be still part of that, and so by being a part of that, that's how you can be a role model. If you actually participate, or you're just part of the scene, or you can actually inform people because you actually know them, or you've seen them grown up. Like a lot of the people that are now just doing the international battles, I've seen him in the Dutch b-boy championships as kids coming up, you know, and you share a lot of moments and you share stories and you actually, and I think for a teacher that's part of your role too, that you're there to give them information, you know, because especially when you start, the dance is all physical, so and the older you get, the more you can actually put it into words, and with putting stuff into words also comes like just sharing the names of the people that came before us, or just the history and stuff like that. And I think vocabulary is also something people forget sometimes, how important it is when you teach to actually learn the names for the moves that are used worldwide. Like you can come up with your own names, but it doesn't make sense. Like you want to enable your students to be able to talk to a random kid from the other side of the world, and just by words be able to tell each other what moves they can do. It's just the vocabulary, that's such a special thing that you can just even online say, yo, I'm practicing this move or blah blah blah. Or even if you want to look it up, like you want to learn how to do a move and you have the correct name from your teacher. Maybe your teacher cannot do it, and there's a million tutorials online nowadays, you know. So I feel getting the names right as a teacher, that's just important. Or know that there's, like, for instance, for some moves there's 5 different names, you know, and that's cool. I think that's of course logic, but it's little things like that.